I used to think my life was straight out of a Hallmark movie. The suburban home with a squeaky clean lawn, the smiling wife who baked cookies on Sundays, the so-called perfect family portrait. If Norman Rockwell had painted us, it would have been nauseatingly wholesome. But the thing about family portraits is they don't show the cracks in the frame. And mine was splitting wide open under the weight of cheating, betrayal, and the kind of toxic love you only read about in trashy tabloids left behind at the barber shop. And it all started with my childhood best friend, because apparently betrayal tastes sweeter when it's delivered by someone who used to trade baseball cards with you and share Oreos at recess. I didn't discover the affair the traditional way, no lipstick on the collar, no suspicious perfume scent lingering in the car. No, my discovery came through something even worse: Facebook comments. Americans can't resist oversharing, and my wife was no exception. I noticed late-night likes on his pictures, inside jokes in the comments, those little heart emojis that scream, "I want your body," disguised as innocent digital affection. It was the modern American love story, except instead of boy meets girl, it was wife cheats with husband's best friend, while everyone pretends to not notice. At first, I told myself I was paranoid. Maybe she was just nostalgic, reconnecting with old friends. Except the old friend was my best friend from childhood, the guy who once swore on a pack of Skittles that we'd never betray each other. The same guy who was best man at my wedding, who toasted our everlasting love, and later that night tried to convince me to shotgun beers in the church parking lot. Classic American bromance, right? Yeah, until the bromance turned into a twisted love triangle that smelled suspiciously like infidelity and cheap motel sheets. The real slap in the face came weeks later when she casually mentioned she was pregnant. My first reaction was excitement. Finally, we'd be expanding the family. But then came the icy stab of doubt. The timing didn't add up. The math wasn't mathing. It felt less like a miracle, and more like the kind of plot twist Jerry Springer built an empire on. I decided to play detective, which for me meant Googling how to tell if a baby is yours before it's born. Let me tell you, that rabbit hole is darker than late-night conspiracy YouTube, where you start with paternity tests and end with lizard people running Congress. I hired a buddy of mine, a guy who thought he was the next James Bond, but really looked more like a bloated Walmart security guard, to follow her. He wasn't subtle, but subtlety wasn't needed. Within days, I had pictures, her car parked at a cheap roadside motel, the same motel that probably hosted everything from cheating couples to Bigfoot fan conventions. And who walked out of the room with her? My best friend, grinning like he'd just won the Super Bowl. When I saw the evidence, I laughed. Not a normal laugh, more like the laugh of a man who's just realized his entire life has been a sitcom prank, the kind where the audience claps when the betrayal is revealed. It was surreal. My wife was pregnant with my best friend's baby. The American dream had been downgraded into a late-night reality show called Toxic Love, Suburban Betrayal Edition. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, sat in my recliner, and thought about every cheesy revenge movie I'd ever seen. If Charles Bronson could turn loss into bloodshed, why couldn't I turn infidelity into poetic revenge? And yet, part of me was still in disbelief. This was the guy I used to ride bikes with through the neighborhood, the guy who once jumped into a creek to save my drowning baseball glove. How do you go from family-like loyalty to impregnating your best friend's wife? The betrayal wasn't just cheating. It was a demolition of everything I thought was sacred. Loyalty, family, trust, shattered into a million pieces like a Walmart glass table after Thanksgiving dinner. I tried confronting her gently at first, thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe the pictures were doctored. Maybe this was some CIA-level conspiracy. But she didn't even flinch when I brought it up. She admitted it with the kind of shrug you'd expect if I'd asked whether she left the garage light on. "It just happened," she said. As if cheating, betrayal, and infidelity were accidents. like spilling coffee on your shirt. That night, as she slept peacefully in our bed, probably dreaming about her new toxic love life, I sat awake. Revenge crawled into my brain and refused to leave. Americans love justice, but what I wanted wasn't justice, it was cinematic. I wanted the kind of revenge where the audience gasps, where betrayal gets served cold, and no one sees the ending coming. I whispered to myself in the dark, "You think you broke me, but you just started a story you won't survive." Revenge is like barbecue in America. It's best served slow, smoky, and with a hint of drama that makes the neighbors peek over the fence. After finding out about the cheating, betrayal, and my wife's toxic love affair with my childhood best friend, I didn't explode right away. That's what they expected. They wanted me to scream, throw dishes, maybe pack my bags, and storm out into the night like some daytime soap opera husband. But no, I decided to play it cool. If they were going to turn my family life into an episode of Maury, with a paternity test hanging over my head like the sword of Damocles, I was going to flip the script and make it a season finale no one would forget. First, I kept up appearances. Around the house, I was Mr. Calm. I kissed her cheek, said love you before work, even brought home flowers once, just to watch the guilt twitch across her face like a bad poker tell. She thought she was winning the game, thought her infidelity was hidden behind locked phones and half-baked excuses about late-night yoga. Let me tell you something. In America, nobody believes yoga happens at 11 p.m. at the Motel 6, unless you're bending over betrayal itself. Meanwhile, I started my research. If you've ever been heartbroken in the U.S., you know exactly where you go for answers. Reddit. I typed in wife-cheating revenge ideas and scrolled through a rabbit hole so deep I was practically shaking hands with Satan by page 4. Some suggested petty acts like changing the Netflix password. Others suggested faking my death and haunting her new relationship. One guy swore by a plan involving raccoons, duct tape, and a sprinkler system, but I wasn't here for raccoon-level antics. I wanted a Shakespearean masterpiece, a revenge plot so twisted it would make future generations say, "Damn, he really did that." I started small, spying. Americans are obsessed with DIY, and I was no exception. Amazon delivered hidden cameras, voice recorders, and even a GPS tracker I slapped under her car like I was auditioning for Breaking Bad. My living room turned into a mini CIA bunker. I had a corkboard with strings connecting photos, receipts, and late-night motel rendezvous. If anyone had walked in, they'd think I was solving the Kennedy assassination, not my wife's infidelity. But to me, it was the same level of betrayal. Every night, as she texted clients, I sat in the garage drinking cheap beer and studying her patterns. And the more evidence I collected, the more paranoid I became. What if this wasn't just a love affair? What if my best friend had been planted in my life decades ago? Some kind of sleeper agent for heartbreak? That's when the conspiracy theory brain kicked in. Maybe the government orchestrated my toxic love story just to test the limits of human endurance. Maybe aliens had abducted him in middle school and returned him with one mission: destroy my family. I laughed at myself, but not too hard, because honestly, in America, you can't rule out aliens. My planning took weeks. I began moving money from our joint account to a secret one. If betrayal was going to bleed me financially, I'd make sure I was holding the knife. I pretended to be supportive about the pregnancy, even went to doctor visits with her, nodding along while she smiled like the perfect wife. Meanwhile, I was Googling legal ways to expose cheating spouse during the ultrasounds. The nurse thought I was tearing up at the sound of the baby's heartbeat. Nope. I was calculating how fast the house would legally be mine once divorce papers hit the table. I rehearsed scenarios in my head over and over, like a Broadway actor waiting for opening night. Should I confront them at Thanksgiving dinner with the turkey as witness? Should I stage a surprise reveal at Sunday church, where betrayal meets holy water? Or should I go full American classic, expose them at a backyard BBQ right as my buddy bites into a burger, and tell the whole family that the bun isn't the only thing he's been inside? Every option had flair. But I wanted the finale, the fireworks, the show-stopping revenge. At night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her whispering on the phone to him. Sweet nothings, toxic love confessions, promises about their future family. And while she dreamed of running off with him, I dreamed of running them both into the ground emotionally, socially, and maybe spiritually. Because in America, nothing hurts more than public humiliation. We invented reality TV just to watch people fall apart under the spotlight. My best friend, let's call him Jake because all American betrayers are named Jake, still came around occasionally, pretending like nothing was happening. He'd bring beer, slap me on the back, talk about football. The audacity was almost impressive. I wanted to punch him, but instead I smiled. Because the sweetest revenge is letting your enemy think he's safe before you light the fuse. By the end of the month, my plan was set. Documents ready, screenshots organized, money secured. The trap was coiled tight, and all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to spring it. Every time she kissed me goodnight, I smiled back, thinking, "Sleep well, darling. Tomorrow belongs to me." The funny part? She thought she was playing me. But I was directing the whole show. And when the curtain finally fell, she'd realize she wasn't the star of this American tragedy. She was just the punchline. Revenge Day came not with thunder or lightning, but with the smell of overcooked hot dogs and cheap coleslaw at our annual neighborhood BBQ. Because if there's one thing Americans love more than freedom, it's grilling meat in the backyard while pretending their family isn't falling apart. I chose this moment carefully. Why? Because betrayal hits harder when it's exposed under the warm glow of string lights and the eyes of gossip-hungry neighbors clutching Solo cups. Picture it. Kids running through sprinklers, adults sipping beer, country music humming in the background, and me smiling like the devil himself, holding a folder thicker than the Bible. My wife was buzzing around, acting like the perfect suburban queen, laughing at inside jokes with Jake, my childhood best friend turned co-star in this toxic love story. They thought they were untouchable. They thought their cheating was invisible. Oh, but tonight I was the magician pulling the tablecloth out from under the entire family. I tapped my glass, clink, clink, and the crowd hushed. In America, when a man interrupts a BBQ, people expect an announcement about a new job, a baby, or maybe a karaoke session. What they didn't expect was me flipping betrayal into a live-action performance. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice smooth, almost too calm. "Thank you all for being here today. We're celebrating more than burgers and friendship tonight. We're celebrating honesty, loyalty, and family." I paused, savoring the irony like a slow sip of bourbon. But unfortunately, not everyone here knows what those words mean. Gasps, murmurs. My wife froze, burger tongs in hand. Jake swallowed hard, like he'd just choked on betrayal-flavored barbecue sauce. Perfect. I opened the folder and pulled out the first photo, her car parked at the motel. Then another, her laughing with Jake, arm around him like prom night, except this prom ended with infidelity instead of corsages. The crowd leaned in, jaws dropping, mouths open wider than the grill lid. One old lady dropped her deviled egg. Somewhere, a kid yelled, "Mommy, what's happening?" My wife stuttered, "It's not what it looks like." But I cut her off, American courtroom style. "It's exactly what it looks like." I held up the ultrasound printout, the one she thought was private. "And for the grand finale, congratulations, Jake. You're not just my best friend. You're the proud father of my wife's baby." Boom. Silence hit harder than fireworks on the 4th of July. Then came the whispers, the laughter, the horrified gasps. My wife's face turned redder than the ketchup bottle on the table. Jake looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole, which honestly would have been the only merciful thing to happen to him that night. I wasn't finished. Americans love spectacle, and I wasn't about to leave my audience unsatisfied. I pulled out the financial documents, waving them like victory flags. By the way, sweetheart, while you were busy with infidelity yoga sessions at the Motel 6, I transferred every cent from our joint account. The house, in my name. The cars, paid off by me. So when you pack your things, and trust me, you'll be leaving with nothing but betrayal and stretch marks that don't belong to me. The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some gasped. One drunk neighbor even yelled, "Jerry, Jerry, Jerry," like it was an episode of daytime TV. And in that moment, it was. I'd turned my life's humiliation into a live spectacle of revenge so epic, it deserved its own season on Netflix. My wife dropped the tongs, tears streaming, begging me to stop. Jake tried to step forward, but I held up a hand. "Don't even try it, Jake. You betrayed not just me, but decades of friendship. You were supposed to be my brother. Instead, you became the villain in a story you're not smart enough to survive." He muttered something about love, about mistakes. I laughed, loud and cruel. Love? That's not love. That's toxic garbage disguised as passion. You didn't fall in love. You fell into betrayal because it was easy. And now everyone sees exactly what you are. By now, people had their phones out, recording every second. The videos would be on Facebook before the night was over, traveling faster than wildfire in California. My revenge wasn't just personal, it was viral. Then came my closing act. I raised my glass high. Here's to freedom, to loyalty, and to never underestimating a man who's been betrayed. I downed the bourbon in one gulp, turned my back on them both, and walked away while the crowd buzzed like hornets. Behind me, my wife sobbed, Jake cursed, and neighbors whispered like it was Sunday gossip at church. But I didn't care. The revenge was complete. The toxic love affair was exposed. The betrayal had been flipped, served cold, and devoured by an entire audience of suburban onlookers. And as I walked into my house, leaving them broken and humiliated in the yard, I smiled to myself, because revenge isn't just about hurting them, it's about reclaiming your power, your pride, and your story. And that night, my story was no longer about infidelity. It was about a man who turned betrayal into entertainment. And won. The thing about revenge is, people assume the credits roll once you pull the trigger. Like in the movies, hero drops the mic, villain collapses, audience cheers, fade to black. But real American life doesn't fade to black. It lingers awkwardly, like a drunk uncle refusing to leave the family reunion. After my backyard BBQ reveal, I thought I'd walk off into the sunset, whiskey in hand, neighbors applauding, maybe even a slow clap breaking out. Instead, what I got was the long, messy aftermath, the debris field left behind when betrayal collides with revenge and explodes all over suburbia. Word traveled faster than wildfire in California. Within 24 hours, everyone from the mailman to the cashier at Walmart knew my wife had been cheating with Jake, my childhood show friend. The videos hit Facebook, then TikTok, then Reddit. Someone even auto-tuned my closing line into a remix called Betrayal BBQ Anthem. Overnight, I became a meme. Half the internet called me a savage American hero. The other half argued about whether I went too far. But let's be real. This is America. We don't care about morality. We care about entertainment. My wife couldn't show her face at Target without whispers. At church, she sat in the back pew, sunglasses on, like she was auditioning for witness protection. Jake got it even worse. He lost his job after his boss, who saw the viral video, decided team loyalty didn't quite fit a man famous for impregnating his best friend's wife. He tried to call me once to explain. I didn't answer. What was there to explain? He'd already confessed with every kiss, every motel check-in, every late-night whisper. Some betrayals don't need words. They write themselves in permanent ink. Meanwhile, I adjusted to bachelor life with a bizarre mix of grief and liberation. My house was quiet, sure, but quiet isn't always bad. Sometimes quiet is peace. No more fake smiles over dinner. No more late-night lies about clients. Just me, my bourbon, and the echo of freedom bouncing off the walls. For the first time in months, I slept like a baby. Not her baby, not Jake's baby. My baby, metaphorical and symbolic, the baby called peace of mind. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't all triumph. Revenge is addictive, like fast food. It feels amazing in the moment, but afterward you're left wondering if you went too far. I replayed that night in my head, her face crumbling, his pride imploding, neighbors gawking like vultures. Part of me wondered if I'd turned into the very thing I hated, cruel, toxic, merciless. Yet every time doubt crept in, I remembered the betrayal, the cheating, the infidelity. And then I smiled again, because in America, forgiveness might be a virtue, but revenge is a right. The family fallout was brutal. Her parents called me, half pleading, half scolding. "You didn't have to humiliate her like that," her mother said. "She's still your wife." My response? Correction, she was my wife. Now she's just a plot twist. Divorce papers followed soon after, signed with the cold efficiency of a business transaction. She tried to fight for the house, the money, even the dog. But thanks to my financial head start, I walked away with the house and the Labrador, while she walked away with public shame and Jake's baby belly. Fair trade, if you ask me. As for Jake, the man who once swore we'd be brothers forever, he became a ghost in town. I'd catch glimpses of him at the gas station, hat pulled low, eyes darting like a man living in constant paranoia. And honestly, that was better than any punch I could have thrown. His punishment wasn't prison. It was waking up every day knowing he'd destroyed a lifelong friendship and built a family on betrayal. That's the kind of toxic love that rots from the inside. The neighbors still bring it up, of course. Americans love gossip more than football. At every barbecue since, someone inevitably leans over with a grin and whispers, "You planning any more surprises this year?" I just laugh and pour another drink. Revenge has a way of branding you forever. Some people get nicknames like Big Mike or Crazy Karen. Me? I'm the guy who blew up his marriage at a cookout. Honestly, it beats the guy whose wife cheated on him. And what about me now? I won't lie. I'm scarred. Betrayal does that to you. Trust isn't something you rebuild with duct tape and a Home Depot coupon. But I'm also freer than I've ever been. I started traveling, took up boxing, even joined a local writing group where I penned stories about toxic love, cheating, family, and the sweet sting of revenge. Turns out betrayal makes great material. Sometimes late at night, I sit on the porch with a glass of bourbon, thinking about how close I came to being just another sad American husband silently enduring infidelity. But that's not my story anymore. My story is bigger, louder, messier. It's a cautionary tale, a parody, a meme, a conspiracy theory rolled into one. It's proof that even in the darkest betrayal, you can find a spark of power if you're bold enough to flip the script. So how does it end? With me, not broken, not bitter, but sharper. With her, raising a child that's a constant reminder of her betrayal. With Jake, haunted by the ghost of our friendship. And with the whole town still buzzing about the night loyalty died and revenge lit up the backyard like fireworks. She thought she ended me. Jake thought he stole everything. But in the end, all they did was give me a story so wild it'll outlive us all. And maybe that's the ultimate revenge. Not just breaking their world apart, but making sure the world never forgets how they broke mine.